So Steven Crowder, the famous Steven Crowder, uploaded a new video today, and I wanted to talk about it despite not really dabbling in this kind of thing before, because it is a VOX rebuttal video, and I just love watching conservatives get mad about VOX. It really is a secret pleasure of mine that I am now putting out into the world for you maniacs to see. So without further ado, I'd like to get into the video. And before I get into the video, I'd like you to watch the whole thing so that you know that I'm not taking anything that Steven says out of context. Okay? Capiche? Okay? Do we got like a Tony Soprano thing going here?
There was a terrorist attack on a United States facility and Americans died. In what world is that not newsworthy?
Fake news.
You believe in curation before information. Question of the day, I am consistently amazed at the left, particularly Vox's ability to cut their own argument off at the knees, like this video we're about to get to, where they accuse media, all media, of being quote-unquote conservative or tools of Fox News.
So the point that Steven made at the beginning there in the black and white universe, I will address that, I promise. I will get to it eventually. Right now, I gotta talk about how Steven has already just completely mischaracterized the VOX video that he is talking about. The central thesis of that VOX video, so far as I can understand, is that conservative news media is just pumping out these completely bogus stories, and we know they're bogus. And because they're so outrageous and inflammatory, they work people up. And because people are getting worked up, the left-wing news media has to craft some kind of response to it, otherwise they'll get called out for trying to censor the story, probably by Fox News. But I don't think that the VOX video that we're talking about in any way implies that Fox News is somehow like knowingly and actively controlling the liberal media. In fact, I think the VOX video says quite the opposite. I think it's saying that the liberal media is allowing itself to be controlled. So Steven's characterization of the main thesis of the video is already wrong.
I'm done. I'm finally done watching Fox News. It's rotting my brain, and only boomers watch that crap anyway. From now on, I'm watching real news, stuff that actually matters.
It's a giant remote.
And I'll never have to worry about Fox News ever again.
Two of the headlines on Fox News tonight.
Gotten a lot of attention thanks to Fox News.
Started on Fox News. Makes my head explode
Don't you love how they
when I see
unironically
these
had
clips from
Brian
Fox
Williams
News.
and Donna Brazile in there? Like they were a beacon of truth.
There's no escape.
First off, what is? How does blood come out from your eye? It's not on the brow ridge.
Yeah.
By the way, $200 million from NBC Universal. This is what you get for it, by the way. So much money.
Okay, super quick right here. I just want to say that I hate how Steven and his buddies always try to commentate over the clips that they're talking about, because it's obvious that they really think that they're being like Mystery Science Theater, but they're not. They're not even fucking Cinematic Titanic. And Steven, you can bleed from your eyes. Like, you should know this. This is like basic shit. Like, I'm not even an EMT. I know a lot of EMTs, but I am not one. Even I know this. And if you're just questioning it as a makeup choice, I liked it. So that's 1 for 1.
So it's predicated on
$3 bottle
before we move on to the
Big
content, which is incorrect. Video is predicated on the idea that you need television to consume media.
Right.
The numbers show us, of course, that if you're under 50, you're not getting your news from TV at all. Also, by the way, numbers and a $200 million investment from NBC Universal that they'll never get back suggests most people under 50 aren't getting their news from VOX.
Yeah,
so it's a give and take. Let's move on to the substance of ish.
Steven's saying that the main point of this video is predicated on the idea that most Americans get their news from TV is, again, him mischaracterizing this argument. Nothing about the main thesis of the video requires TV to be the only medium from which people derive their news. He's not wrong, by the way. That study he showed is reputable, and it is true. It's just that the entire argument he's making here is irrelevant to the video. And when Steven mischaracterized the video again here, I kind of realized that it was probably going to be a pattern. And it is.
In an ideal world, political journalism looks like this. On either side, you've got the parties, fighting for the attention of the press. Okay. And in the middle, you've got journalists, sorting through what's important and what's just partisan bullshit. This is called gatekeeping, and it's one of the most important things journalists do. Political operatives can spin whatever talking points they want, but ultimately it's the journalists who decide what's
The guy at Vox is going to take healthcare, not Russia.
And we don't live in an ideal world. We live in hell.
This is really concerning. Notice their ideal view of journalism. This is really important here.
Yeah.
They think the most important role of journalism should be to be gatekeepers.
Right, deciding what we see.
We know that it should be to inform the public. They want to actually decide what information the public has access to. They say that's the most important role of journalism. How about the most important role is getting it right?
Yeah.
Steven, the reason he said that gatekeeping was one of the most important jobs of political journalists is because that he said it within a hypothetical statement. He prefaced the entire statement by saying, in an ideal world, this is what political journalism would look like. And then he goes on to describe this situation. And then at the end, he agrees with you.
But that is in an ideal world. And we don't live in an ideal world. We live in hell.
So keep all this in mind because we're going to come back to it. All right, next clip.
Fox exists in this weird in-between space because it claims to be a news organization, but it's essentially a Republican front group.
I hate that he's Fox.
The network was founded by GOP political operative Roger Ailes. Not sure why he's posing like Shirley Temple in this picture.
He's not.
Listen, I understand Vox's argument here, and it's not completely invalid.
Right.
Okay. There's always been an overlap between politics and news sources. That being said, Fox News is actually, when you separate the opinion side versus the news sides, and I worked there for 4.5 years, and I get it with the opinion side, and I have a guy in my neighborhood, all he does is trim his hedges and watch Fox News. That's not healthy.
No.
And I don't mean some days, I mean every day. That's all he does. Hedge trim, Fox News. What is he? If he takes a day off, he's dead. I know that he's dead. But when you separate opinion and the news division, you have a pretty diverse cast of characters. You've got Libertarian Judge Napolitano. You've got gayish centrist Shep Smith. You've got Tucker Carlson. He's more of a Trump populist.
Yeah.
They just hired Donna Brazile, former chair of the Democratic National Committee.
Now, Steven is a little bit correct here in that Fox News anchors, they do tend to disagree with each other sometimes. But the thing about this argument is that overall, Fox as a channel has a very cohesive and very consistent message that they push with everybody that they have. So, micro, yes, macro, not so much.
But can you say the same about, I don't know, Fox?
No.
Yes, I do think there is diversity of opinion at Vox. I think if you look at their playlist of uploaded videos, you'll see that.
Wait, do we really want to argue that most news organizations, they don't have connections to the DNC, the Clintons? I mean, we could just go George Stephanopoulos directly. You don't need to do the 6 degrees of separation.
Right.
Bill Clinton's communication director. We have leaked emails that show CNN, Politico, other outlets, they had actually worked with the Clinton campaign, leaking information to them before debates, sending articles to Clinton to review before publishing.
Steven, politicians being sleazy and sleeping with the press is not a hot take, and it's not a hot take for the Democrats or the Republicans. But honestly, I'm really not going to address the whole Hillary Clinton emails thing because it is so out of date, it is so out of the public consciousness by this point, and it is just a conspiracy theory through and through, and it is not worth being addressed. So I'm sorry, Steven. I know you flashed some articles there. I read them. One of them's from just a right-wing trash outlet. One of them is just an opinion piece. One of them is somewhat credible, but as I said before, there is nothing revolutionary about knowing that politicians are in bed with the press.
Why are we pretending that this happens on one side? I get it. Fox News does that. They focus on minutia. But if we want to talk about, and this isn't just whataboutism, I think it's far more severe on the left. Trump Russia, Trump tweets, Melania looking sad. That was one where they were talking about how she was looked like she was a prisoner in her marriage. Half of CNN's 16-hour original clock is nothing more than junior staff trying to quell Brian Stelter's erection from Trump's latest typo.
Steven, this is just another one of those cases where you're arguing with nobody. Everybody will agree with you that MSNBC and CNN and the other news outlets, the major ones other than Fox, oh yeah, they are all totally left biased, and in a lot of ways they are just as bad as Fox News. And part of what is baffling me about what you're saying is that is the point that Vox is trying to get at, that the left-wing media is partaking in this, and that is what is making them as bad as Fox News. That's why you can't escape Fox News, because the left-wing media is basically doing the same thing. This is a point that Steven keeps coming back to, by the way, throughout the rest of the episode. He keeps going like, oh, but the left does it too, and it's like, no shit, Sherlock. We know. I know. I know that the left-wing media is pretty bad as well, and that's why I don't consume it. I don't consume cable news. It does not go inside my eyes.
Now what you're thinking.
Oh my god,
you really?
who cares? It's Fox. None of us actually watch that crap.
Except you do watch that crap, Mary. You just don't realize it.
Mary.
Because once Fox News goes
that supposed to be,
all
like,
in on
funny?
a story, other networks pay attention.
Isn't that how media is supposed to work, by the way?
Yeah.
Journalism, isn't it supposed to be that there's an exchange of ideas?
Yes, Steven, this is how journalism should be, but that can only work when all outlets in journalism are acting in good faith, and we all know that there are quite a few of them that are not acting in good faith at all.
This whole idea, too, this is
No,
what bothers me,
Stephen, no.
the idea that we're newly polarized. They just talked about, surprise, surprise, they vilified Nixon. And I understand, of course, rightfully so. Nixon did some horrible things.
Right.
Really, it would be child's play compared to what happens nowadays.
Right, yeah.
That being said, this has always been a polarized country.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be to some degree, right? We're supposed to be able to debate these things. But when he actually said that nobody watches Fox, I'm like, that's funny. You're talking about the #1 cable news channel in the world.
Again, these people are kind of giving the impression that they have never consumed a piece of media before, because when he said in the Vox video that nobody consumes Fox media, he was saying that as a character within a skit. So there was a pretense for him to say that, and his point was that she was wrong. Agrees with you. It's you're misconstruing the video when it's almost like you're searching for something to disprove, quote unquote.
Well, not only that, but they also get mad about the media, saying people shouldn't be doing all of this. They shouldn't be covering Fox. They shouldn't be doing all of these segments on Fox. You should just ignore them.
Yep.
But Gay Mexican, what are you doing right now, currently, this very second, at this moment? What are you doing? The only reason I found it was because this popped in my news feed and I saw, oh, Gay V-neck at Vox talking about Fox. This should be interesting.
This is Steven's third time completely mischaracterizing the whole thesis of the video. The thesis of the video is that left-wing media is doing a bad job because it's allowing Fox News to take control of the conversation. It's not about how Fox News is like maliciously and sinisterly like taking over all of the media. It's not us lefties trying to do a conspiracy theory on you, Steven. We're much too dignified for that. We have to sip wine.
He has become what he hates.
And you've done it so many times, too. We have an overlay here. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with covering opposing viewpoints. We do it all the time. We're doing it right now. Unlike the authoritarian governments that you support, for example, Canada, they have government news, and they want to fine what they call hate speech. We just see your irony, and we mock you mercilessly for it. It's not nearly as bad as the gulags, okay? Next clip.
I think you're being very generous by calling what you're doing with this video covering alternative opinions, Steven. And government news, what does that mean? Like, the BBC? Is that government news? Is the BBC authoritarian now?
Benghazi, for example. I'm still mad about this. In 2012, Fox began peddling wild conspiracy theories about a terror attack in Benghazi.
Wild. conspiracy.
Explosive new details about a
Did they tape that in front of the third-grade picture bed sheet?
Questions about Benghazi.
Questions still remain unanswered.
Some have suggested this is bigger than Watergate.
Fox's goal was to smear the Obama administration, sure. But it was also to get
whole
other
thing was
news
done in
outlets
Kmart.
to take that smear seriously.
You know, at first blush, I think most journalists would be inclined to mostly ignore that. It wasn't nothing, but it just wasn't like the biggest news story in the world.
What?
But it's on Fox. It's on Fox. You hear about it more.
Okay, there was a terrorist attack on a United States facility and Americans died. In what world is that not newsworthy?
Fake news.
Only the world where you believe that your job as a journalist is not to provide people with valid information, but to gatekeep. You believe in curation before information.
I'm just gonna brush right past Steven and his friends not understanding that the simplistic look of the show is a stylistic decision that was done on purpose, because it's time for the right's favorite place in North Africa, maybe anywhere in Africa. Benghazi, Libya. And yet again, now with the subject of Benghazi at his side, Steven is mischaracterizing things again, because he is portraying the Vox article as having the argument that Benghazi was not news in any way, when, yes, US soldiers dying in a foreign country, especially when there were diplomats involved, is newsworthy and should receive news time. When US soldiers get killed in other countries, it usually makes the news, and it usually does the rounds for like at least 3 news cycles, sometimes like a week. But this is not what Vox is saying at all, and my evidence for this is the video itself. Not one of the news clips that Vox used to demonstrate their point was about the attack in Benghazi itself. They were all about the conspiracy theories surrounding it.
Explosive new details about a possible White House cover-up on Benghazi.
Unanswered questions about Benghazi.
Questions still remain unanswered.
Some have suggested this is bigger than Watergate.
Cover-up. Unanswered questions. Like, these are phrases that are associated with conspiracy theories. So I think Vox was clearly trying to specifically choose stories about those conspiracies. And yet again, Steven has asserted that Vox is in favor of gatekeeping journalism, despite the fact that, again, when they said that, it was within a hypothetical statement. Like, I shouldn't have to reiterate that, okay?
Most Americans would want to know that.
This is very petty, I know, but I don't know if you guys saw that, but Steven, there was like one frame that was just a completely different shot. For some reason, it was a different camera, but it was only like one frame, and it was right at the end. You guys saw that, right?
You claim that this is just white noise and that nobody... It's your job to explain why, because that would be atypical of this kind of story. And this is the trend, by the way, in Vox videos. Sometimes they're hard for us to respond to.
Yeah.
Because, okay, let me explain it this way. An argument, typically, it's made up of 3 things, okay? 1, a claim, right? That's the first step.
Okay.
2, rationalization or reasoning for that claim. 3, evidence for said claim and the subsequent reasoning. With Vox, it's just claims, but there's nothing else after that claim. That was a completely empty claim.
Yeah, it's hard to go after their evidence when there is none.
What do we do here? Well, the Americans wouldn't care about Benghazi if it weren't for Fox. Is it? How do you prove that? Oh, let me guess. You watch Shep Smith? What? That's not a claim. Yeah. Oh, see what he says. That's not a claim now. What? Is this happening?
Well, Mr. Argument, how am I supposed to respond to your claim that Vox doesn't use evidence? Am I supposed to provide evidence that they consistently use evidence throughout their hundreds of videos? Like, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? Like, I just don't see how or why I should address this. I could just say, Steven, you have no evidence either, but then we would just be going tit for tat and nothing would be achieved. So I'm trying to say this in the best way possible, but, you know, like, why bother, man? Lastly, I don't think that people would have only cared about Benghazi because of Fox. It was a big story, and it was a big fuck up on the government's part. Like, that is true. But the conspiracies about it are simply just not true, and I will not accept them in the conversation.
Okay, next clip.
So the result of that is that there's incredible agenda-setting power in AM talk radio and Fox News. They all go talk about something, no matter how sort of crazy or unimportant it is. It gets on the news agenda and it gets covered.
Like Americans dying in a terrorist attack.
For being tenacious enough to cause the mainstream media not to ignore this.
There's no equivalent to this on the left. What? And that creates what Matt calls a hack gap.
No, hold on a second. First off, you are the hack gap.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's you.
Second, the reason Fox News and AM radio exist is because it was entirely the equivalent of what you're complaining about on the left, okay? There was no Fox News. Up until that point, it was network news and CNN. Look at Turner. Supported China's one-child policy, okay? Not a bastion of not only conservatism, but even balanced thought. Network news?
Yeah.
Outside of, by the way, AM radio was a technology people thought was dead. It would all move to FM radio, and then you had someone like Rush Limbaugh. It doesn't mean that I agree with any of these people. Doesn't mean that I support their ideas, but there is a reality. It was an alternative, AM radio. It was an alternative to all other forms of radio at that point. Fox News was an alternative to all other forms of news at that point. That's why you bitch about them so much.
Yet again, Steven is mischaracterizing the argument of the video, using the same mischaracterization as before. That somehow Vox doesn't know that CNN and MSNBC do the exact same things as Fox. Like, they just don't know. Like, they're in the dark, they're oblivious. Vox know this very well. Again, the main point of the video is that the left-wing media is being just as bad as Fox News because they are allowing themselves to be tricked into redistributing Fox News's drivel. They know, Steven. I promise. They know. I think Steven is also just misunderstanding the point about the hack gap. The point about the hack gap, what the Vox video is trying to say, is that Fox News basically has a monopoly on junk news.
Welcome to Hannity. Buckle up. Busy night tonight. The radical socialist field, 2020 Democrats, is a dumpster fire. An email obtained exclusively by this show reveals that a senior Google employee deployed the company's resources to increase voter turnout in ways she believed would help the Clinton campaign win in the last election.
The fact is that there was never any evidence that the president colluded with anybody. There's no evidence in 428 pages. There's no evidence that the president in any way obstructed anything. Mueller got to see everybody he wanted to see, except the president himself, and the president agreed to submitting written questions and answers.
And junk news sells really well, and the liberal outlets will not sink low enough to produce their own junk news, so they have to pick up the junk news from Fox News if they want to get that, like, those juicy ratings, you know? The point being made here is not that CNN and MSNBC and any of those other stations have no liberal bias, but Fox News has a ton of conservative bias. Quite frankly, this is the point in the video where I kind of came to an epiphany that this was all the video was gonna be, and I watched the rest of it, and that's really what it is. After this, Steven talks about Ilhan Omar for a while, and it's just completely ridiculous, and then he just keeps restating his point, which is just a gross misunderstanding, at the very least, of what the video he is talking about is actually trying to get at. I'm sure you can hear that I've become, like, actually more tired as I've gotten farther into the Steven Crowder video. I have become weary with his ignorance. So I'm gonna let one more clip play, and then I'm gonna let us out. This video is too long already anyways.
and they act like Fox News is the only one that has this hysteria. I mean, CNN, they run entire segments about Trump. Remember the one was, I think we have an overlay, Trump was getting 2 scoops of ice cream and people were just glancing at the solar eclipse. Which, by the way, was funny and kind of dumb to look at the solar eclipse.
You know,
but again, Brian Stelter, put away the Lubriderm. It's not that big of a story.
12 hours of that.
Just this weekend, there's a journalist from Time. I still don't believe he's straight. A journalist from Time Magazine tweeted a fake Trump quote about North Korea. It was pushed by the people at Media Matters, where Mexican gay guy used to work, Mexican gay Latino there at VOX, and CNN. So how is there no equivalent of this on the left? Not only do they criticize everything about Trump, the left repeatedly makes up fake stories to criticize. By the way, when the fake story is proven fake, it doesn't even matter. They just continue to say we're going to impeach him over a fake crime that he didn't commit.
No matter what the report says.
It doesn't matter what it says.
And as set forth in the report, after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.